Welcome to an all-new episode of Get Lit with Lianna, the podcast. Join me as I sit down with a new guest author in each episode to discuss their books, careers, and everything in between. I am so excited for today's guest. I get to sit down with one of my favorite romance authors, Denise Williams, who wrote the new book, Do You Take This Man? Many of you likely know Denise's name because she wrote so many other amazing romance books that we've loved, including How to Fail at Flirting, The Fastest Way to Fall, recently the Airport novellas, and she has more coming down the pipeline. So I'm so excited to have the chance to talk to Denise about these books, but especially about her latest release because it is so steamy and it's so different because it's an Enemies with Benefits. Like that's a book that I don't think I've really read before. So without further ado, my conversation with Denise Williams starts right now. Welcome, Denise Williams, to the podcast.
Thank you so much.
Thrilled to have you here, like beyond thrilled, excited. I've been like counting down the days till we get to do this. So welcome. This is like so long overdue, I feel, but I wanted to wait until you had like a novel out that we could chat about. Because otherwise I would have just like invited you on 4 months ago and we would have talked about everything else. But now we could talk about everything plus the new one.
Love it. Here for it. Totally.
Amazing. Okay. So before we get into this, I love to go into these interviews like relatively blind without knowing too much about like an author's trajectory of their career. So before we start talking about Do You Take This Man, can you just give me like a little debrief? Like, how did this whole writing thing start for you?
Sure. So I always loved to write. Like I would write short stories. I got really into writing like murder stories when I was like 9 years old.
Oh my God.
Like little short stories, super angsty, awful poetry that I recently learned was still on the internet from 20 years ago. That was surprising. And, you know, I just always loved to write, but it was never a career path I planned on. I have a PhD in education. I've worked in universities for 15, 20 years. And so that's where my writing was. And that's where I thought it would stay. And after... I'm trying to think. In 2015, I actually started listening to a lot of romance on audiobooks because And then in 2016, I thought, you know, maybe I could write this. And then a little bit later, I had my son, who was 3 months old. I was in the middle of a big research project for work. 2016 was just 2016ing all over the place. Yeah. And I just felt like I'd lost a piece of myself. Like I'd lost that link to my creativity. And I thought again, you know, I wonder if I could write a romance. And so I sat down one night to write like what I thought would be a short story about ex-boyfriends. And I just kept coming back after my son would go to bed. And I wrote more and more and more. And that turned into How to Fail at Flirting, which is my debut novel. And I thought at some point, I was like, you know, maybe this is a little bit good. And I let my friends read it. And they kindly and gently and lovingly told me it wasn't. Went back to the drawing board and edited, learned more about writing, found a writer's group. And found some writers to critique it. And they less lovingly and less gently told me it still wasn't good. So kept editing, kept writing, and eventually felt like it was good to submit to try to get an agent and to publish. And it was. And I love that book. And then at the same time as we were working on that, I wrote my second novel. And I always say that one was really easy to write. I wrote 90% of it in 1 month. I don't know how I did that. I can't write that fast anymore. I wrote 90,000 words in 1 month. And that was a little easier because I didn't know that anybody would read it, aside from maybe my friends, because my first book wasn't published yet. Like I didn't have that. I was writing something that I just felt in my heart. And that's really how I've tried to approach my other books too, although they've had deadlines and, you know, other people's opinions. That's been kind of my trajectory. So I still work full time at a university. My research has kind of slowed a little bit the last couple of years, but I still have that on my plate in terms of that kind of writing and professional service. So all of that exists outside of publishing, outside of romance. And, my specialty is I work with students of color in universities. And then my research is about student veterans. So none of this has anything to do with romance. So it's kind of two disparate, but lovingly interconnected parts of me that I'm really excited about. So I have the week off from work this week, which is a lot of fun because I get to just focus on the writing piece and kind of leave the university where it is.
Yeah.
That's kind of my trajectory. That's the long and short of how I got here.
That's wild. So what was it like going on submission? Like, was it a fast process for you? Like what was getting like all of that process?
Yeah, good question. I always describe submission as the stone cold worst. And that's because I'm a control freak and you have so little control over that process. So I was not on submission for very long. I don't think in the grand scheme of things. I think my first book was out on submission for about 6 weeks.
Wow. Okay.
I think maybe a little bit longer than that. And then things started happening with Berkeley, who's still my publisher. And then since then, we had a second contract with them. And then I had 3 novellas that came out earlier this year and they were under a third contract. So I luckily haven't had to go out on sub again. But my experience the first time, at the time I thought was awful. In retrospect was probably just me being a little impatient because I don't think it was super long in the scope of what it could be.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. So I need to just tell you how I was introduced to you. And I kind of mentioned it before we hit recording, but there was 2 separate scenarios that brought me to you that kind of happened simultaneously, which is so weird. And obviously the stars were aligned and they wanted me to find you. But part one of it was I had met the author Allison Ashley on Instagram because I had found her book randomly on Goodreads. And her and I were DMing and I was like, I need more books that are like yours. What's similar? And she was so modest. And she was like, my friend, Denise, you need to read this. You're going to die. You're going to love it. And it was How to Fail at Flirting. And I was like, okay, fine. I'm going to go ahead and buy it. And then randomly, around the same time, the Morning Toast podcast, they have their division of a book club, the Redheads, and they chose your book as the monthly pick. And at the time I was an avid listener and I was trying to keep up with their picks. So I was like, okay, if they picked it too, this is obviously something I need to read. And it was obviously epic. It's one of my favorite romances now to this day. And even after I read this new book, me and Allison are having a conversation and I was just I adored it, but there's nothing that'll ever, I feel compare to the first time I ever read a book by you. Cause it was just a completely new experience for me. But basically I wanted to ask, in terms of finding new readers, was that experience of getting selected as a book of the month by that type of podcast, a big catalyst for you, do you think, in reaching new readers? What do you even credit that experience as to in helping catapult your career a bit further?
Yeah. It's a good question. I'm sure it does because I think this is true of all folks like you and people who are doing podcasts and people who are doing blogging and book talking and bookstagramming and all of the people doing all of this work to lift up books, do so much to just spread the word, because I think books are one of those things that can be marketed to us and are marketed to us. But so much of finding a book to really fall into, especially as a bookish person, is somebody you trust giving their opinion. And I think to that end, completely credit all of those sources. To the other side of that, and this is not taking away from that credit, I oftentimes don't know that is happening. So sometimes, I think I only knew about the Redheads because I think somebody tagged me.
Okay.
Or a comment or something like that, or I stumbled on it on Instagram. I don't remember, which is fine. I don't need to know about those things. Yeah. Better if others don't know. But that is interesting to kind of learn some of those things sometimes because we don't always know, where our books are being talked about or where it's shared.
For sure.
And so that is still actually really fun. I have Google alerts set up. And I still get a ton for How to Fail at Flirting.
Yeah,
and sometimes stories from years ago, or, last year this happened, or something along those lines. So you kind of get to see where people are talking about it. But no, I do think reaching new audiences is so much people who are in those communities and who are leading those groups, vouching for a book. That's where I get, what I want to read is from friends and, fellow, not fellow influencers, because I'm not an influencer, but influencers who I trust. Yeah. And I think that's not just true with fiction. I think that's true in so many areas. Trying new foods or trying new exercise crazes or new crafts or new destinations or I don't know, whatever. So I do think spaces like that are amazing.
Yeah. We also just need to talk about the Allison Ashley of it all because she's my favorite person and I know she's your favorite person. And she just always tells me little anecdotal stories of you reading her work, her reading your work. And before Do You Take This Man came out, she was prepping me and she was it's steamy. And I was like, okay, but what do you mean? And she was like, it's steamy. And I was like, okay, but her other books have been kind of close. It's steamy. And I was like, okay, I get it. And then I was reading this and I literally was texting her and I was like, Okay, you didn't lie. It's steamy. Like it's there. I need to know like the decision to try to like make that leap and go into something way more explicit. Like what was that like for you as an author?
Sure. Honestly, it didn't feel like much of a leap. I love writing sex scenes, explicit content.
Yeah.
The way that people connect on a physical intimacy level that they sometimes can't interpersonally.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it didn't feel like a leap for this book to be that. It's just that these characters, like that kind of story, I thought really fit them.
Yeah.
Versus my first story where there was a lot of open door sex, but the emotional pieces where the characters were kind of living with that. And so it was open door, but I don't think it was as explicit as this. And then the last story was open door and explicit, but it was a slow burn.
Different. So like,
get there. Yeah. And in this book, the characters really were in that place where they were not in their feels. They didn't want to be in their feels. They were ready to get down and dirty and physical.
Yeah.
And so it felt right for them to have, like more explicit language or like a little bit
dirtier. It was
like
dirtier
relationship. I think. So
100%.
For me, it wasn't a jump to write that. It just that's what this story fit.
Right.
I love writing steamy scenes. Like it is one of my favorite things to write.
No, and you're so good at it.
Oh, thank you. With this book, this was my kind of the worst of the pandemic baby. So I wrote this when I was largely in quarantine, at least the first draft.
Right.
Or, we weren't back to normal life yet.
Right.
And so the soundtrack to this was the Paw Patrol theme song because my kid
love.
And I wrote all the sex scenes first because I just needed an escape from 2020.
I really feel that.
And then I put together the rest of the story. So I wrote all the steamy scenes first.
I'm obsessed. Okay, but wait, before we get into You Take This Man, because like I want to get into it, I just need to ask you about The Fastest Way to Fall, because I loved that book for so many reasons. But obviously, like for me, the most touching part, or the part that like I related to most, was like the positive body representation in that story. And I just wanted to know like what that was like to write as an author, why you wanted to include that so heavily in that story. Like not only is that the main character's like something she's living through, but it's a big plot line in her relationship too.
Yeah, the impetus for that story actually came through work. So I was part of a group of women and non-binary people who were having a retreat. It was a women of color retreat. And we were doing an activity that was something along the lines of asking people to reflect on a time they felt strong.
Okay.
I remember all the details, but I do remember, I actually hate those kinds of activities. Like as a participant, I hate like self-reflection, even though it's so valuable and meaningful and I make other people do it all the time. But anyway, I was playing along since I was there as a leader. And I actually thought in that moment about being at the gym. I thought about being at the gym and just like that feeling when you step off the treadmill or the elliptical or the bike or get out of the pool or whatever you're doing. And you just have crushed like a personal best. And it has nothing to do with anybody else, but you step off that machine and just feel like you could conquer the world.
Yeah.
And I thought about that moment and how it felt and what would it be like to fall in love in that moment. In that moment where you step on the machine and it's just like, oh, I got this. Like I did that so well. Like I am awesome. I am powerful. And then to fall in love. And that's really where I was thinking about, okay, I just finished writing How to Fail Flirting. That's kind of off doing its thing. This is the story I want to tell. And I did not plan it in advance. It was like 120,000 words at one point. Like it rambled all over the place.
Oh my God.
Luckily pulled it back in. But I love that story. And I love the journey that the heroine goes on because for me, as I got into writing that story, I realized I wanted to tell share a character that I felt was very honest for some people. Because some people are just like confident through the roof. Like some people bring Lizzo energy to every moment of their life. God bless them. And some people are insecure a lot of the time. God bless them too. I really wanted to write somebody who was in that middle part, who sometimes questioned themselves, who, sometimes struggled, but was generally very happy with themselves. And so I actually learned a lot writing that from some very smart people. But I do love that character. Funny bit of trivia about that book. My first draft, I sent it out to my friends. And again, I was like, I love it. I think you're just going to really like it. I'm so happy with it. And they came back and like, we love Wes. We love the story. We love the body positivity. Britta is a robot. And I was like, no, she's great. And then I reread it and I was like, oh no, you're right. She has no personality and no friends.
Oh my gosh.
So I got so excited about writing Wes, who isn't a character I personally relate to, but who I just wanted to hug.
Yeah.
And so then I had to go back and really flesh out Britta beyond body positivity. You know, who are her friends? What makes her laugh? Like,
right. That's interesting. And then I love that we get to see bits of her in Do You Take This Man?
Yes.
That's
because RJ is her best friend. And so we get just a little cameo of them. And I wrote a free little bonus short story that's actually Britta and Wes's wedding. And so then you see RJ get in that. I put that out a few months ago just because, again, I wanted to write something else.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Then I actually put out a bonus steamy scene between Britta and Wes that is inspired by a bookstagrammer friend, actually, who was talking about boudoir photos. And it's at Lovingly Read. And
wow.
Like, what if Britta got boudoir photos for Wes?
So cool.
And he actually ends up taking them for her. And so it gets a little steamy, but it's also very much like, here's this fat woman who knows she's hot, who is doing these photos. And like,
yeah.
So that was a lot of fun too.
I didn't know that exists. Now I have to go and get it. I just like die for your content. So anything else you could tell me to read, I'm going to go ahead and find it.
Okay. I'll share the link with you.
Please do. Please do. Okay. But now I'm more than ready to talk about Do You Take This Man? So before we start, can you just give everybody like the little elevator pitch about what this book's about?
Sure. So Do You Take This Man is a contemporary romance rom-com story, and it centers RJ, who was Britta's best friend. She's a divorce attorney and for romance reasons also officiates weddings, which is actually something that I do.
What?
We can get back to that. Yeah. So she officiates weddings on the side and actually kind of loves it. But at the same time, RJ is tough. RJ suffers no fools. RJ has her walls up, and RJ does not really believe in romantic love. So she literally runs into a dude bro wedding planner who used to plan events for the NFL. His life fell apart, and he's now home living with his cousin and helping her plan weddings. One of the very first things he says to RJ is that she should smile more. I promise he redeems himself. But he is very much determined to not be the nice guy that he was before. So these two just can't stand each other. They really get off on the wrong foot a few different times, but they have this really kind of undeniable chemistry, physical chemistry. And so they get into this enemies with benefits arrangement. And through this enemies with benefits arrangement, they really actually discover things they love about this other person. So it's always banter and kind of picking each other. They're both competitive, but they begin to break down each other's walls. And both of them, I dedicated the book to the people who think they're hard to love, because I think both of these characters really believe that is true, that it's hard to love them, that they as themselves are not lovable people. And then they find this other person who actually does love them and makes them feel lovable. And so it's really their journey through that. So I think it's funny. It's definitely got a lot of physical intimacy, a lot of heat in it. Yeah. And there's a lot of banter, but I just love these characters because they both have so much that they need to break down before they can let somebody in. Yeah. There's a lot of kind of journey of figuring out, how can I let myself be loved? And what does that look like for me? Yeah.
Okay, wait. Before we talk about this book, I need to know about you officiating weddings, because that's wild to me. I did not know this.
Yeah, I got ordained through the universallifechurch.com years ago. And the first one I actually did with my uncle for my mom's friend. We kind of tag teamed it because he got ordained through them in the late 70s, I think through a back of a Mad magazine or something like that. Oh my God. So we did that together. And the first one I did by myself, my high school best friend called me on like a Monday or Tuesday and said, "Hey, what are you doing?" It was Thursday or Wednesday. Can you come and marry me and my girlfriend before I deploy to Iraq? And I was like, well, sure. I think I drove them to the ceremony. We like wrote it while we were in the car. But that was the first one I did by myself.
Oh my God. That could be a book.
I've done like 10 or 12 weddings since then for friends and family.
That's so nice.
But I have a good track record. All my couples are still together. Everybody has them. All happy. And I've been able to do a lot of families' weddings, which is really cool. Like I always win in Two Truths No Lie, because I can say I married my brother, I married my best friend, and I married my cousin. And then when I say that, people are like, brother?
Which like, one's the lie?
Cousin, actually. I've never married a cousin, but I did marry my brother to his wife.
That's amazing.
Oh, yeah, it's a really fun. I haven't done it and it's maybe been a year or two since I've done a ceremony, but it's so fun, like coming up with the story and the words. And it was cool writing this book because I could plan all of these other people's weddings without having to actually plan them or pay for them.
That's amazing. I didn't know you had that personal connection, and now it makes so much more sense considering you have that connection. Like, I love that so much.
Yeah.
But this book is like, obviously what you said, it's an enemies with benefits, which I actually, when I was reading this book, I was trying to think like, have I read an enemies with benefits before? And like, I've read an enemies to lovers, but never where it's like enemies with benefits where they're like consistently enemies and for like a long period of time. How did this idea come to you? Like, what was the inspo behind this?
This one, the initial idea came, I actually know the exact date and time and location, which is odd. It was July 26th of summer 2019. We were in New York, going to a restaurant to eat tiramisu, and it was my birthday, and I was in New York, and that was the one time I got to meet my agent and my editor in person.
Okay.
And so when we were walking in, my agent and I were just chatting, and I think I maybe had a wedding coming up or something, and I mentioned that I did that, and she said, "Oh, that would be a good book." And I was just noodling that the whole lunch, and as soon as I got back to my hotel, I wrote a first draft of the first chapter of kind of who these characters would be, and then sort of set them aside for a while. That was ago. But that story just kind of always swam in my head. I am total trash for enemies to lovers.
Same.
And that's where this started. And that's what I always called it. But I was like, they're not really, they kind of are enemies, but it's more that the things they're competitive about don't change.
Yeah.
It's just that they figure out kind of what the benefits are.
Yeah.
And so, I liked that they were still claiming like, I can't stand you, but come here, we have 15 minutes in a supply closet.
No, it's mental because the tension and like the hatred or like the enemyness between them is always there, but like, yet they're still so sexually attracted to each other. So it's this weird like dichotomy when you're reading it, because it's like you want them to fall in love, but like you also don't want them to because you're loving what they have going on and you don't want to ruin a good thing, Yeah.
And I think for both of them, they're enemies at the beginning because he is kind of being a dude bro. And, and she's being RJ, like not giving any slack and being very like specific. Yeah. And so they don't like each other for legitimate reasons at the beginning. But even as soon as they do start to like each other, for both of them, that I can't stand you, or this is why I don't like you, or this is why you're disagreeable is a safety blanket. Yeah. It's a defense mechanism. And I think it's clear to readers, it was clear to me as I was writing, they don't really feel that. And they know they don't really feel that. Yeah. But especially for RJ, she can hang on to like, oh, it's just this guy I don't like, but he's really good in bed. Yeah. She doesn't have to admit that, oh, he makes me feel seen, and he, I want to be with him, and I like talking to him, and he makes me feel comforted, because those are very scary things
for sure
for her. And I think some people love that, and some people are like, just get out of your own way and get together. And I was like, that's just not how people are. Like, people that way all the time. So that's kind of where the impetus for some of that came from.
Okay. And I love RJ's character. And I feel like a lot of people, like from like early reviews and things that I've been hearing, like some people find RJ like to be very tough, and like she is very tough, but that's what I love about her. And I find that in all of your books, all of your characters are very like dimensional and layered, and they're not just regular. They're not just like easy cookie cutter people. And I really love that you made RJ so layered. And one thing that I love about both her and Lear, and I would love to talk to you more about this, is like their names and how their names play such a huge role in these books. And I have to tell you, when I was reading it, like right when I started, I was like, okay, what does RJ stand for? And like Lear's obviously not, I mean, like maybe it is, but in my head, I was like, that feels like it's a nickname. And it's very obvious that like that's an armor that they put up, and you make it very, very clear in the book where you explicitly say like their names or their real given names are used in like a more intimate setting. Why did you want to add that element to the story?
I would love to say I planned that out from the beginning. I totally didn't. I just like the names RJ and Lear at the beginning.
I'm dying.
I just love these names. Especially Lear. I just thought that once it popped into my head, I was like, I love that for a hero's name. But as I started writing them, I loved the idea that both of them had this kind of armor for whatever reason. Like for RJ, her real name is Ruth, and she never really gets into why she doesn't use that, but her family calls her Ruthie, and she doesn't use that in her law career. And so RJ is more guarded, but I think also just fits her better. Yeah. And Lear, it actually ties back to his family and his parents. It's not really a spoiler. His parents pass away when he's a teenager. And so he's trying to fit into this new town and figure out his new role. And some advice he gets is good advice at the time, but actually kind of shapes him in some negative ways later, which is, be charming, be agreeable, be the nice guy, and you can navigate this space. And so he actually gets the name Lear when he kind of goes against the grain, doesn't go out for football, and tries out for a King Lear production. But yeah, truly, like, I wrote that after the fact. I just really like the name Lear. I think
it's so crazy.
Hero's name, and I hadn't really heard it before.
Yeah.
In a lot of spheres. But for both of them, they eventually share, like, this is what my real name is. But one of my very, very favorite moments in the book, and again, I don't think this is too much of a spoiler, but
go for it.
Cover your ears if it is, is at the end, she says, you can call me Ruthie. Call me that. And if I don't tell you you're special, which I might forget to do, that can be a reminder. And he says, I don't want to call you that. Like, that's not the person I fell in love with. Like, I'm not seeking this soft, pliant person. I want you. And I want to call you RJ. And I just love that moment. It's kind of a simple moment. It's not a big grand gesture, but it is this space where it kind of underlines that he doesn't just tolerate the front she puts up because of what's behind it. He loves the front and he loves what's behind it. And so I think that's total cinnamon roll behavior. Again, the hero redeems himself. Listeners, I promise he does, from the you better smile thing. But he really sees her. And I love that moment that you don't have to be soft and happy and peppy and
you just be you.
To be loved. And he sees that. And part of that is in the name, that he knows what her name is and he knows he can call her Ruthie in a joking tone. But when he's really saying something serious, it's RJ.
Yeah. So that's like also one of my favorite scenes. But in terms of like other parts of the book, what was like, tell me the funniest or like hardest part to write? I can't like, did this book spill out of you the way The Fastest Way to Fall did?
It didn't come quite as fast, but I blame the pandemic for that. And being in that headspace. I'm trying to think. One of the scenes I actually love the most is the gas station wedding.
Love.
So there's these two brides and they met at a gas station. And so this wedding is a gas station wedding. And I just really love that because it started out as a joke with a friend. We were joking about wild wedding locations. We're like, what if there was a gas station wedding? And they got married between the pumps and there was a Funyun fountain. All these things that I just like plugged into the book. And so the whole time I was writing it, I was just chuckling. There are so many details that I cut out in editing because they didn't, they weren't important. But I don't even know that scene is particularly funny, but the setting just makes me laugh so much when I picture it. I really, really like that scene. And then I don't know that they were hard. It wasn't hard to write, but it was special to me. So Uncle Harold is Lear's great uncle. It's who him and his sister lived with, him and his great aunt when their parents passed. And so now he's back visiting Uncle Harold. And Uncle Harold is based on my great uncle, who actually died a little bit after I finished drafting this book. So that place, like, I'm writing my Uncle Ernie and Aunt Millie's like backyard and their place on the mountain and their house.
Okay.
And just reading it, you wouldn't know that. But writing it for me felt really wonderful to write that space. And actually, one of the last times I saw my uncle before he passed, because it was right at the end of COVID, right before COVID, I took my son out there to meet him and we fed the birds and like on his porch, just a simple thing. And so I put that in the book, again, just for my family and for me, like to put kind of some of that.
Yeah.
Those real people who have shaped kind of what I look at as wonderful people. Kind
That's
of the best people, and how that fits into, different characters and things like that. I'm rambling now, but those scenes like were really lovely for me to write.
That's so special. So now that this book is like out and everybody could buy it, like what are you hoping readers take away from it? Like what's your biggest wish from this one?
I guess I hope they think, oh, this is so good, I have to buy it in audio too.
Did you record the audio yourself?
Oh, no. Teddy Hamilton and January Lavoie narrate it, and they're phenomenal. I just got to listen to it like yesterday.
Exciting.
And they do a great job. But I think, on two levels, I hope readers have fun with it because I think it's a fun book. Like there's some emotional notes for sure, but this is much more, I would say, of a traditional rom-com than my other books, I think. So it's light, it's fun, it's sexy. And so I hope people have fun reading it. But on that other level, it's kind of what you talked about. I hope for those people who do think, and especially, it's not just women, but especially women who think, I'm not like bright and sunshiny, or I'm not like super nice, or I'm not, all these things I feel like I'm not. that make me someone who's hard to love, that make me somebody who's hard to care about, that make me somebody who's hard to be friends with. I think we all have those moments, and some people more than others. I hope those people really see themselves in these characters in some way and know that, you know, that moment of thinking I'm hard to love just simply isn't true.
Yeah.
It's just, we're looking for those people who see us for who we are and can
100%.
love us for what we bring to a relationship. So on a deeper level, I hope people find that. But on a lighter level, chapter 16 and have to fan themselves a little bit.
Literally, they're going to be like needing like a water spritzer and a fan and like a nice cool breeze. That was literally me reading it. I was like sweating.
I mean, okay, depends on how deep they are into spicy TikTok. Because I guess, not, but
I guess I feel like I'm not that deep into spicy TikTok. So for me, this was like spicy, you know?
I felt good about it. I was very comfortable with the
no, you have a real talent. Let me tell you. I know this is your strong suit for sure. Okay. Before I let you go, I need to know what you're working on now. I know that you have those airport novellas and there's another one coming out in March, right? There's one more.
Yeah. So actually the Missed Connection, the Love Connection, and the Sweetest Connection, that's out of order, but the three of them already came out, audio and ebook, this summer, and they all take place in and around an airport. They're, again, like they're rom-coms. They're pretty light. They're fun. They each have one or two pretty spicy scenes that is open door, but they're largely a little quieter in that realm. And then what's coming out in March is actually a collection of the three of them. So all three of them will be printed in one book or one ebook, and it's called Love and Other Flight Delays. And I'm obsessed with the cover. I wish I should have it up on my wall behind me. It's like bright yellow and it's happy and like
love. That's so fun.
Those were just a lot of fun to write. It's fake dating. It's rivals to lovers, grumpy sunshine.
Trope heavy, my fave.
Lovers.
So good. So good. So what else are you working on now that's out?
Yeah. So the novellas are out and then the collection will be out in March. Next summer, I think May, June, I've contributed to an anthology that's coming out from Harlequin called Even If the Sky is Falling. Okay. And I don't think it's on sale yet, but it might be up on Goodreads. I'm not sure.
Okay.
But in that one, they pitched it essentially as Love Actually meets your favorite 90s disaster movie where they kiss at the end. So all of these couples think the world is ending. We learn very early the world is not ending. But you see all of these different stories of people kind of sheltering in place. So my two are basically two former college rivals who are all grown up and back for a college reunion and get stuck in their old science building where they've always been competitive. It opens in a sex scene, like the story opens in the middle of sex scenes. So I was very proud of that. So it is pretty steamy for these two, but it's a little bit of a similar, kind of some similarities with RJ and Lear. Like they're competitive with each other.
Okay.
The heroine suffers no fools. The hero is kind of getting over some things, but they have this history. And so they have 12 hours together where, of course, they rekindle all kinds of things from college. And then there are 7 of us in that anthology edited by Taj McCoy. So that'll be coming out May or June. I don't know the date yet.
That's so insane.
It's I can't wait bananas, to but I think it'll be really fun.
I need to read. I can't wait. I'm going to go add it on Goodreads after this. That sounds wild.
Yeah, I think I need to add it on Goodreads still.
Yeah,
so that is actually all submitted, everything they're working on editing. And then right now I'm under revisions for my 4th novel that'll be out next fall. And it actually doesn't have a title yet. We're working on that still. But if you've read The Fastest Way to Fall, it is Pearl and Cord's story.
Oh my God.
Of Do You Take This Man as well. And so that is going to be a second chance romance. There is a tent sex scene in it that is Allison's maybe favorite thing I've ever written. And so when we were talking about revision, she's like, protect the tent sex, protect the tent sex.
She just loves herself tent sex, that girl, honestly.
I know, it's true.
Yeah.
So I actually drafted that book like 2 years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago. So that one has been percolating for a while, but yeah, that one will be out next, I think end of next September.
That's so exciting. You were just busy writing all the things.
Yeah, I need to maybe like pare that back a little bit.
Definitely no.
But I love it. But I've also got like 22 ideas over here that I'm like, I can't wait to write this.
That's so great. I love to hear that. I'm obsessed with your writing. I can't wait for these novellas to come out in print. I didn't even know that they were in audio. So now I can go listen. I'm recently new to like the audiobook world because this is why. I'll tell you the explanation. I love like sitting and reading, and I love that that's like my quiet time. And I just in previous experiences have found that like sitting and listening to an audiobook, I get too distracted and I love just like sitting and reading. But recently I've been traveling a lot by train and I can't read on the train because I'm so nauseous. I'm like the most motion sickness human ever. So I started doing audiobooks recently and I'm loving them. And now I'm finding that like I'm getting hooked on the audio. So I want to continue listening to it. So now it's a whole new world. So I can't wait. I'm going to go listen to those now on audio because why not? You have them. I may as well.
Well, and I love audiobooks, and in part because I can't just sit and listen to them either.
Yeah.
I do it while I'm driving, and I commute 45 minutes each way every day. So that is how I do a lot of my listening. But when I was first working with my audiobook producer for the book, she's like, "Oh, you know your narrators." And I was like, "I do. I'm a little obsessed with audiobooks."
Amazing.
So since then, like I've actually got to have a lot of say in who my narrators are. And the narrators for the novellas are phenomenal. Like I did fangirl. I still do fangirl over every single one of them. But the first one is January Lavoie, who actually narrated my first novel and narrates RJ.
Okay.
And she just has this wonderful, like amazing talent. Because somebody asked me with the first book, like, well, who are your narrators? I was like, January Lavoie. I'm like, well, who did the men? I was like, January Lavoie.
That's the best.
Who did this person? I was like, it's the same person. Like she just did all these different voices. And then Shane East, who, if I could put like sex in a voice and then make it British, that's Shane East's voice, if I could be so indelicate.
Oh my God.
He's also incredibly talented, but yeah, just this amazing voice. And that hero is British, is a romance author, and is a cinnamon roll, but you get this very like perfect voice. Perfect for
Bennett. Can't wait.
The second one is Jacoby Diem and Denise Williams, who I hadn't worked with before. But Jacoby Diem recently won like the big audio award for doing Kennedy Ryan's audiobooks.
Friggin' love her.
Williams was just a perfect Gia. She just had such a bright, happy voice, which is that character. And then the third one is Teddy Hamilton, who actually voices Lear, and Angel Peen, who does a lot of like YA things.
Okay.
But anyway, all of the narrators are like,
okay, I can't wait. I'm sold. I'm so sold. I'm going to literally start today. I'm going to start tonight when I get into bed. It's my activity before I go to sleep. I can't wait.
I love it. And if you want to talk about Shaney's voice or Teddy Hamilton's voice or any of their voices.
Oh, that will 100%.
Into my DMs because I'm here for that.
100% that will be happening. I'm going to need to like fangirl and freak out for sure.
I do that. So yeah, anyway, long story short, I love audiobooks. When I get to listen to my audiobook, for me, that's actually a bigger deal than like holding the physical book in my hand for the first time. Like
love
that. Just listening to somebody else read it, I can completely separate that I wrote the story from enjoying the story for whatever reason. And so that I think is part of the fun too.
I kind of get that. Like when you're reading it, you're reading your words, so you hear it in your voice, but then you hear other people reading it to you. So you kind of detach from that. I kind of get that.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. Yeah. So I'm just sitting there crying at a passage that I wrote. I'm like, I know what's going to happen. I know I wrote it, but I'm just sitting there driving down the interstate, like tearing up because the acting is so good.
I can't wait. I'm going to literally start tonight. I'm so excited.
Oh, yay.
Okay, well, I don't want to take too much more of your time. So thank you so much for chatting with me. I could have honestly asked you a million more questions about like all of your other books, but we will save them for the next time you come on for your next book. I can go back and ask you more questions about each of these books and you'll just keep building on this.
I mean, we can just hang out, slide into my DMs.
I love that.
We'll like hop on a Zoom call and talk about all.
Okay, no, don't even tempt me with having me on. Don't tempt me with a good time. I'm going to make you do that with Allison. We're going to have a 3-way chat. It's literally going to be iconic.
Okay, here for it.
I love that. Okay. Thank you so much again. Congratulations on this pub date. I'm so excited for you. I can't wait for everyone to read it. Go buy it now. It's out. Woohoo!
Thank you.